This video is sponsored by SetApp. So this is the Samsung Galaxy Fold, and we've probably already heard about this phone in some way, shape, or form. And this is Samsung's folding phone that they announced way back in February of this year. Once Samsung started seeding review units out to the media, shortly after, one by one, units began to break. Some of them had dust and debris somehow get underneath the screen, and others mistaken the plastic layer or film that was on the screen as a screen protector. Instead, it's actually part of the screen, and they tried to remove it and the screen would break. Obviously, Samsung did not want another Note 7 disaster on its hands, so they did not ship this device at all, and instead took it back and began to immediately diagnose and try to fix the issues. So if we fast forward to today, where Samsung has officially re-released the groundbreaking folding phone, this time with no pre-orders or any fanfare. There are only a handful of units actually available at some Best Buys, Samsung Experience stores, and AT&T wireless stores, as that is the official launch carrier of the Galaxy Fold, at least again at launch. Now I was able to pick one up today. I opened it up and wanted to immediately give you my first impressions about this phone. Now usually when we talk about a device that's not directly related to Apple, in some way we try to do a comparison. Like with the Note 10, that's Samsung's flagship phone of the year, so we're gonna compare that against the larger iPhone 11 Pro Max. It's just natural that they are competitors. Well, Apple doesn't really have a folding phone to compete with Samsung. They just don't have something like that. So for this video, we're just going to really focus in on the Fold and try not to really tie it into Apple because again, there's really nothing at this moment in time that competes with it. In the US, this is really the first of its kind. And to be honest, I was really excited about it. Say what you want about Samsung and its execution or potential lack thereof, this is finally a phone that doesn't feel like the rest of them. Smartphones are just doing incremental updates because we've kind of advanced really quickly in this space. So there's really not a whole lot of drastic things you can do except for making a display that actually folds in half, which is crazy because we don't really have that. It's unique, it's bold, and it's really interesting. Now, is it worth $2,000? Well, let's take a closer look and then we'll talk about that. Unboxing experience for a $2,000 phone, I do want to mention, kind of leaves a little bit to be desired, but it's definitely more intricate and much more well packaged compared to most devices. There is one cool thing that you do get inside of the box, and that's a pair of Samsung Galaxy Buds, which is the company's AirPods equivalent, truly wireless earbuds competitor, whatever you want to call them. That's kind of a nice thing to get inside of the box with something so expensive. There's also a lot of paperwork and quite a few reminder guides saying to be careful with this phone and listing all the ways and things that you could do to damage the display. And it honestly made me feel a little bit uncomfortable to open it up and start using it because there were just a lot of warnings. The phone itself is massive and heavy, which is to be expected given the size of the device when it's unfolded. The right side of the phone is where your volume and power buttons are located, as well as a fingerprint sensor, which can really only be used with your thumb if you're right-handed. You're gonna have to use your pointer finger or one of these fingers if you're left-handed and primarily hold the phone in your left hand. But if you're right-handed, you're just gonna use your thumb, so you only really need to register one finger or one thumb. The back of the phone has a triple lens camera system, and then get this, there's actually 6 cameras in total, so there's 2 more on the inside when you unfold it. And then there's a single camera on the front above the tiny little display. Speaking of that tiny display, this is where things kind of become comical to me. I'm not really sure why Samsung made such a small screen on the front. There's tons of room here for at least something that's a little bigger than a 4.6-inch display, but oftentimes I do find myself saying maybe next year I'll go for the smaller iPhone. And then I ultimately wind up with the Max version because I just kind of prefer a larger screen. But there are scenarios where it's convenient to have a smaller display. So maybe that's what Samsung was thinking when they made such a small display on the front, and maybe not just hardware limitations, although I don't really know for sure. But it is kind of nice to have a smaller display on the front in times where you need to use your phone with one hand, or you really just can't be walking around with a mini tablet unfolded. But still, it doesn't really look great with these massive forehead and chin bezels. Ultimately, it's not at all about the front screen and really more about that beautiful 7.3-inch display on the inside when you unfold it. When I first opened up Chrome and typed out a website and then unfolded the phone, it was like magic. I know that sounds crazy and maybe stupid and you might roll your eyes, but even when I knew what was going to happen when I did that, it was still really cool. Folding it, on the other hand, was terrifying. I honestly thought the display was going to crumble, which doesn't give me any hope at all for longevity, but we'll see. After doing it a few times, I did kind of feel a little more comfortable doing it, but the initial close, I honestly thought something in the screen was going to pop off or just fold, no pun intended, like just crumble inside. Obviously, there are many benefits to having a mini tablet available in your pocket at all times with a simple unfold, most notably being media consumption and productivity. Multitasking on a phone is not something that I really enjoy doing. I've used some pretty large Android devices in the past, like the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 I have right now, or the 9 and the 8, and they all have a multitasking or dual app feature, but I never really use it because I just didn't think it was useful. On the Fold, it feels like multitasking on something like an iPad mini. It works really, really well too. Even typing on a screen this large is incredible. The keyboard is split apart, but nothing feels cramped, and I feel like there's so much room for error, and typing just seems much more efficient and kind of enjoyable. One of the main draws of this phone is when you're using the front display and you need to get more information, or you want to pick up where you left off by using the larger display. When you unfold it, it does it immediately. It's super quick. There's rarely, if ever, any lag right now when switching from the front display to the larger 7.3-inch display, which is the selling point. So if you have something like Google Maps open and then you really need to like hone in on some information, or you just want to get a bigger picture, you just unfold it. Some seemingly good news with this iteration of the Galaxy Fold is that Samsung seemed to have fixed the issues that plagued the first set of units. Like I mentioned before, there was some dust or debris that was getting underneath the display. So instead they added these little T-shaped brackets at the top and bottom, right in the middle where the hinge is at, to prevent any dust or debris from getting underneath the display. And you'll also notice that the phone doesn't look like there's a screen protector on it, because that thin layer of film actually extended all the way through and underneath the kind of edge, the plastic lip, the hinge, whatever we want to call this little border here. It melted in and underneath that part of it, so you no longer see it, so you can't try to remove it. So these two solutions should in fact fix most of the problems that those review units had in the past. But just the other day, an article came out on TechCrunch with a reviewer who has the new version of the Galaxy Fold and already has damage to its display. And their guess is they might have pressed a little bit too hard on the display while folding it closed. Now that's honestly literally one of the warnings on the box, and when you open up the phone and go through the setup process, they say do not press very hard on the screen, and otherwise you'll have some damage. So after only a short period of use with this phone, I find that it's easier to close it by pressing on the bottom portion of the hinge and not necessarily on the screen, and just kind of doing a light press. You don't want to slam this phone shut. You don't need to press really hard on the screen. It's $2,000. You're most likely going to want to take care of it. So let me know what you think of the Samsung Galaxy Fold. Do you really think that Samsung has solved their problems and that folding phones are the way of the future? Or do you think that this is a not so cheap but cheap gimmick that really won't last? I myself would love for this to be the future, but again, it all depends on what the mass majority thinks. So I would love to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I also do want to tell you more about this month's channel sponsor, SetApp. SetApp is one of the best places to find new and useful applications for your Mac. SetApp packs over 150 Mac apps into just one. Every app's developer on SetApp provides full support and seamless updates for their creations so that you can focus on yours. And since data is largely cloud-based, it only makes sense that apps should be too. So that's why SetApp installs and uninstalls apps instantly, all while retaining your settings so that you can have it all back whenever you need it without hogging any space up on your computer. There are so many useful applications that I use on a daily basis, like Paste, Zip, Downy, and much more, with new apps being added constantly. So use SetApp completely free for this first week to see if it fits with your workflow by clicking the link in the description down below. This has been Dan with Mac Rumors. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you around in the next video.